So with that, can we move to you, Michael? Would that feel okay?
Yeah, great.
Awesome.
So when I was thinking about, when I was preparing for this and I was thinking about the idea of the yes and the no, it felt very black and white to me. And I don't know about anybody else, but my life experience is normally more like shades of grey than black and white. And particularly when we think about consent as well, often it tends to get framed in terms of a yes or a no. And for me, what that brings up is the idea of permission. So we give permission with a yes, or we take permission away with the no. So that's often how it tends to get framed. With my work with the wheel of consent, I've my definition of consent has kind of expanded a little bit to focus more on agreements. So for me, consent is not just about one person saying yes or saying no, the permission aspect of it, but it's also the agreement that gets made between people about what will or what won't happen. And an agreement is can be made up of lots of different elements. So it might be about the location something's happening in all the time, or how many people are involved. And it's more nuanced than just a yes or a simple yes or a no. So when we start making agreements, we're moving from the binary of the yes or the no, more towards the want or the willing. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the idea of want and willing in this context. So in most exchanges or interactions, there's somebody who's putting their desire or their want first, and there's somebody else who's putting their desire or their want aside for the benefit of somebody else. So wanting is when you put your desire first, and willing is when you put your desire aside temporarily. And of course, there's also not willing as well. And because life has conditioned us in so many ways to go along with stuff and put up with stuff and endure stuff, it's often our willingness that gets pushed to the edge or overridden, and we often override it ourselves. So this impacts our ability to look after our limits and our boundaries, and to be able to communicate or to feel a no in some form. So although it's obviously it's really important to be able to feel and say no, I often find when I'm working that it's the understanding of how willingness feels in our body that can help us to move towards being able to feel and speak our no, and to understand what kind of no it actually is. So a lot of my work, I work with what I call the scale of willingness. So on the one end, there's a hard no, absolutely not, never under any circumstances. On the other end of the spectrum, I'm totally willing, really up for it, 100% enthusiastically willing. And it's worth, you might be kind of thinking, well, what's the difference between that and a want? So a want is something that originates within myself. It's a desire that originates in myself. And when the desire is originating in somebody else, I may be really super willing to be involved in that, but the desire is coming from somebody else. And so I encourage people when I'm working with them, rather than simply defining their impulses as a yes or a no, but to follow a couple of steps and dig a little bit deeper into what's happening for them. So when there's an impulse for something, it might be touch or an impulse or an action or a request coming towards you, to ask, is this something I want for myself, or is this something that I'm willing for to benefit somebody else? And if I'm willing, where am I on that willingness scale? Am I really as willing as I'm saying I am? Because I might be falling into patterns with that. If I'm not willing, or not very willing, what might need to change in order for me to become more willing? And it might be that there's nothing that could change and I'm not going to be more willing. But there are things like, I might not be willing right now, but I might be willing in a couple of hours, or I might not be willing with you, but I might be willing with somebody else. So I can start to become aware of those nuances, and that helps me to move beyond maybe that immediate contraction that might come with a feeling of just saying no. And I can start communicating around it and start to move towards a more expanded agreement that might incorporate elements of yes and no, and bringing that into a much more kind of conscious interaction with the other person.
Hmm. Yeah. I just say it's new for me. It's very exciting. That's new, and I'm wrapping my mind in it. It feels to me that the yes and no are these very hard polarities from what you're saying, that um, equal kind of this permission giving that maybe allows for a defensiveness or a rebellion against, which may seem a bit of the hard, I want to say problem, but might inspire an emotional reactivity that isn't always as open for connection. Whereas wanting, willing feels a little softer, not softer in that consent can be walked over or violated, but softer in that it allows space for both people's emotions to settle into that pause and that open space to feel into what they want. Am I hearing that right? Does that sound?
Yeah. Yeah. I liked what you said about the softer aspect of it. I think I would agree with that. It's kind of, it feels more engaging somehow than just kind of like yes or no. And that excites me because ultimately we're in a dialogue with the people that we're in relationship with. Or we need to be in a dialogue if we're going to have a healthy relationship with them. So yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
I
yum.
really,
I gotta say yum.
yeah, I really appreciated the scale that you talked about and the layer of the conversation that you're bringing here with things are rarely ever just black and white in life. And so, and I'm just underlining again, I think this has already been said, but I just love how even with this scale that we can then tease out what are some of the real things underneath that I need to identify to feel really yes in my body. So I love that spirit of curiosity, that question that you asked about, like, what might I need to change it to a yes? Like, so those are the two things that I took away from what you said that I really loved. It's that, scale, which is great, and then bringing the spirit of curiosity to it. Because
Mhm.
asking those questions, still doesn't mean it's going to change, but still we get a little bit clearer, perhaps, in
Mhm.
asking more of those questions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other person might then have a clearer sense of where we are as well. Whereas
Hmm.
if we just say yes, say no, that doesn't give them much information.
Yes, yes. Sometimes we need those. Um, sometimes I don't use words really well, but it's almost like something to push up against, to feel, oh, I feel that and that doesn't feel good, so that boundary doesn't feel good, or that statement or that desire doesn't feel good. Um, so yeah, I like what you just said about that too.
Mhm.
Sometimes we need to have something to feel into, push up against.
Mm. Maria.
Yeah, I was also really tuned in to when I heard you talking about, Michael, about, what might move me closer on the scale to willing, or, to be more willing. Um, and I was so that brings in the whole concept of negotiation, right? So really getting into the gray areas. And what I'm reminded of is, I'm sure many of you know Monique Darling. The first time I met her in person, I was at a workshop that she was presenting with a colleague, and she was also participating. So she and I were doing a bunch of cuddling, and other people kept coming over and saying, "Oh, is it okay if I, get behind you and cuddle?" And I noticed that she kept saying yes, and I asked her, "Monique, how can you possibly be a yes to every single person?" And what she told me, I have really kept in mind and have certainly used in the cuddle parties, which was, if you think about it, you can be a yes to most everybody about something. It doesn't have to be the thing that they have requested, but I found that that's true. that I can be a yes to most anybody about something, right? It might be having a conversation. And, you know, something as small as that, or a handshake. Unless there's some really, you know, huge, like all the alarms going off in my body, like danger Will Robinson type of thing, then I can be a yes. Something.
Interesting. I gotta say that makes my dark energetic blueprint aspect of me get a little like, not me. No. No.
Great.
No, I will be a yes to something. With most people, you're probably right, even if that is just the conversation part of it. But yeah, no, I'm actually very protective of my energy, so I might not be as quite open as that. That statement might not work for me personally, but it's really exciting to hear that it does for somebody else, and that that's a different perspective.
Yeah, I tend to be the kind of person who presumes that everybody is nice and good and all that kind of stuff, and you know, and everybody has their good points regardless. So I'm usually open to at least a conversation, and I resonate with what you're saying too, Christina, that I'm also protective of my energy.
Is it okay if I inject something there? I want to say,
yeah,
I can still consider somebody lovely and still not want to give anything at that moment.
Yeah.
A full fuck no to any interaction, because I can just be, I can put my cloak on. Yeah.
I think that is something that's so important that I've learned, which is that I don't even have to know myself what the reason is, nor do I have to give a reason. But if I'm a no, it's just the way it is. I'm a no.
It's that saying no is a complete sentence.
Yes. I was really liking when you were talking, Dee Dee, about, I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was the nuancing and the layers around this wanting willingness. But it made me, in the conversation you and Michael were talking about there, it made me feel that sometimes changing the verbiage, changing the wording can be so powerful, even if they have the same meaning. But because people are so used to, and I'd love to hear what you all think of this, people are so used to hearing no and yes and having an emotional reactivity to both and or either, depending on the moment, that maybe even just taking those words out of the picture and putting it into want and willing in different levels might just allow the nervous system for people who have triggered emotions around no and yes to soften it and open a little bit to more conversation. What do you think?
Yeah, I've certainly found as I've kind of worked with this, and I've adopted that language. I was interested in what you said about changing the language. The more I've worked with it, the more I've started using the word willing when I'm in conversation. Oh, are you willing to do this? Because it just makes it really clear. Okay, this is a request I'm making. It's something I want. Are you willing to help me with that? And so even on a level, even if somebody doesn't know the tool or the wheel of consent or any of the other stuff, just using that word automatically means that they get a sense, okay, this is for him on some level. And so then they can formulate their response based on that, rather than having a sort of muddy, I'm not sure if this is who's getting what out of this. And yeah, so I've just found it helps me be super clear and other people be super clear with me.
I like that. It gives a personal responsibility, it sounds like, too. This is for me. Are you willing to do this for me? Instead of that ambiguous in between, who's this for? What is it really about? Dee Dee, I think I see you formulating over there.
I would love maybe if someone could like role play this. So where I'm thinking of my own experience, right? Like for me, I've done a lot of this work at play parties. And what will happen is someone will make a request and I'll say, I'm a yes to you kissing me on my neck. I need to give it some time and space. Will you check back with me in an hour? Right? So I'm a yes to this or a no to this or whatever. So this is sort of like a negotiating. So my mind is trying to figure out how would I use the want and willing. So maybe somebody could role play. Since you're the facilitator, maybe you could do that with me, Michael. Because I love being really concrete for people, even just myself. So, so yeah, I don't know. Should I be the asker? Do you want me to ask for something?
It feels like the impetus is coming from you, so why don't you kick off with what feels alive for you, and then see where we go.
Okay. And I'm just gonna give, I don't know, because we're all sex educators, I'm gonna do something sexual here. So, Michael, I would really love if you could kiss down the left side of my neck all the way down to my shoulder. Are you? Yeah. I'm just going to end it there because I see where we go.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think at this point I'm noticing a need for a pause in myself, and to kind of, like we've spoken about before, to sort of feel into that, to kind of visualize it almost. And yeah, I think at that point my response would then be, yes, I'm willing to do that. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the ways I could say it is, Michael, I'm really feeling a desire or a want for you to kiss down the side of my neck all the way to my shoulder. Are you willing to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're with people who aren't necessarily so familiar with it, you can use the terminology yourself to help them. But obviously, if you're with somebody who also understands the process of it, then, I mean, my immediate response would be, yes, I'm willing, because that's so indicating that I understand that it's for you.
Yeah, right. Okay. I think I'm feeling something in my body is not landing quite yet. And I don't know what it is.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Would that be okay?
Yeah.
So if you were saying to somebody, then maybe I'm asking of Michael if this phrasing sounds right. I'm seeing if what you were asking initially, if this is how it would phrase from what I'm hearing.
Yep.
If somebody came up to you and said, I want to kiss your neck. And if you were open to that but wanted to wait later, would it be the answer would be, I'm willing to do that, but I want to wait until for an hour? Are you willing to ask me in an hour?
There, that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Because you then have a want. You want them to ask you again in an hour.
Yeah, you're saying you're willing to do what they ask, but you want to wait for an hour, and you're asking if they're willing to do your ask as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so we're in a constant flow between want and willing. Like it's not black and white. We're always shifting in split seconds between the two.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the negotiating, I think, that I was like feeling of like, Hazel Grace, I've done some play parties with her, and her phrase is, I'm a hell no to this, but I'm a yes to this. Like, I'm a no to you kissing down my neck, but I'm a yes to holding hands for 5 minutes. How does that land with you? So it's the same thing. So that little negotiation was perfect. Thank you, Christina.
That works good. Right.
Or saying, I'm not willing right now, but I'm willing to be asked again in an hour.
Yeah.
Right. It could be that I'm not willing now, but I'm willing to be asked in an hour.
If you did say that, Dee Dee, as you and Christina were just talking about. Like if you did say, I'm willing to allow you to do that, and are you willing to come back and ask me in an hour? Is your purpose to take your time and check back in with yourself and say if you're still willing in an hour?
If I were the person that was giving, you mean?
No, you were the person that was entertaining the other person's request to kiss them your neck.
Yes. It would be to check in. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a way. That's like an embodied way of doing what I was talking about earlier, is giving yourself some time.
Nice.
Yes, the spaciousness. Yeah. As a energetic, as Christina, I'm sure, can attest to also, for me, that's a common thing that I'll say, because I need the spaciousness. Sometimes I'm very, very sensitive to people's energies. And when someone comes in with a strong energy like that, for me, it's like off-putting. So even though I'm feeling like, oh, they just like landed, I ask for that spaciousness. So yes, thank you for illustrating that. It is a sense of spaciousness that I often need to make a decision.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So then at that point, it may be then, I may be willing. And would you be willing to wait an hour? I want the time and space to feel into that. Yeah. And I may be.
Yeah, that would be more accurate.
It would be more accurate. I might be willing, or I may be willing. To break that maybe up. I may be willing, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow, super juicy. Thank you.